So welcome to the video. We're going to talk today about the differences between a driving iron and a hybrid and why you would use one versus the other. So we get a lot of people who ask us questions about, what club should I use? I had recently a lot of questions about driving irons, potentially because it's now summer and the ball's running miles. But there's distinct reasons why you would use one versus the other based on swing style, shot pattern, and the course you play. And there are really some strong considerations between the two that you should consider when deciding which one to use. So we'll start with the driving iron element. So got the Titleist, the U505. Both heads are going to be 21 degree loft. So a kind of relevant loft rather than just the 18 degree to 2 iron driving iron. So this is actually one of the higher launching heads, so it's got quite a wide sole to it, so quite a deep profile, lots of weight at the bottom. I'll turn that around so it's relevant. Lots of weight at the bottom there, which helps generate, relative to driving iron heads, a reasonable bit of launch. But one of the reasons you would use a driving iron or a kind of a utility iron like this is because you want a forward ball flight. So there are some players that are just better with an iron. You have a distinctly downward angle of attack and squeeze the ball, and the iron heads, the smaller heads, actually work well for that. But with that comes that flatter flight. So really we're using these heads to get the ball forwards. It's about not letting the spin get too high and keeping that ball flight out of the sky and down and forwards. So I'm going to hit a couple of shots with this, talk about it and then move on to the hybrid. So it's the kind of thing, I've always hit a high ball. So if you're naturally a high ball player, this is the kind of club that can keep that launch angle down and forwards a little bit more. If you play a course, I happen to have St Andrews on in the background, if you play a course that more a link style course, and again there's lots of wind, this can keep that flight down and forwards. So there are certainly conditions that are going to suit the driving iron, suit the utility iron more than a hybrid or on from that a fairway would. So I'm going to hit a couple of shots, we'll talk about the data, switch to the hybrid and see what the differentiation is here. So these are both 21 degree loft. So two of the differences, or one of the main differences, shaft shorter on the iron versus the hybrid. So that's one of the elements where it can feel a little bit more controllable. If you're someone who struggles with fairway woods and left and right dispersion consistency, and particularly using it as a club just to get away off the tee, that's really where a driving iron can help. Hence the name, obviously. So I'll get in a couple more with this. A little bit out the heel. I'll do one more so we've got a batch of data there. So with each of the shots we've just hit, launch angles all around the 13 degree mark, spins mid 3000s, which I've always been able to generate a decent bit of spin, and club speed being fairly strong. That's something that, two of the considerations with this club. If you don't have a lot of speed, if you don't generate a lot of spin, then one of the downsides of these clubs, they just won't stay in the air for you. So if you're looking for carry distance, this probably isn't good for you. For me, because I hit a higher ball, this stops it ballooning, keeps that spin down and gives me that forward momentum. So from a dispersion point of view, see, that's a very straight shot. This becomes a very reliable club. Because of the shorter length, it's like an extension off the irons. You can still put a graphite shaft to them if they suit you, but it's played as an extension off the irons rather than wood-like. And that lower flight means really there's less time in the air, there's less time for the shot to shape and move offline. But that down and forwards flight, you get it on the ground, you get it running, and it can become a very, very reliable off the tee club. I mean, these ones height-wise for me are sort of 85, 90 feet. And land angle, I'll come back onto that later, the hybrid up at 40 degrees. That for me is fine because I've got 135 mile/h ball speed on it. But the lower the ball speed gets, the lower the height's going to get, the shallower the land angle, the less control you're going to have. So, as a job role, this is a great club if you're looking for something reliable and running off the tee, or if you're playing a links course, you're playing a lot of wind and you want to keep it out of the wind, it gets the ball down and forwards. It's a great club for that. We're going to come on to the hybrid now, so I'm going to compare it with the Titleist, the TSR1. I've picked two heads that generate a reasonable bit of launch. This is almost sort of like a small fairway wood in terms of setup. So this one is designed to get the ball up and out a little bit more. But what we can automatically see here is whilst the driving iron, forward driving iron is quite broad, the difference in width front to back between the two. So what that does is the deeper head allows the weight to be set further back, gives it a little bit more stability, makes it more forgiving, but that also affects the launch and the spin characteristics as well. Relative to loft will generate a little bit more flight, a little bit more kick up in the air. So in contrast to the driving iron, these tend to be great clubs. One, if you tend to be a little bit shallower and pick the ball off the top a little bit more. The iron suits someone who hits down on it and squeezes the ball a little bit more. But if you're looking for height and looking for carry distance and spin, then that's where you'd look towards the hybrid. So I'll go to this, and bear in mind these are both exactly the same loft. That's hit the net far, far higher. So as a single shot, the distance between that and the last shot, they're all 225, 227 yards, exactly the same total distance. But height-wise, we've gone from 90 feet to 122 feet. The land angle from 40 degrees to 48 degrees. So all of a sudden, we're seeing a huge amount more elevation for the same swing. Now, because the club's different, my delivery's changed a little bit. I'm a little bit shallower, so that on the one hand also helps generate a little bit more flight, but the head style is what's going to take that spin rate in this instance, so 10 to 15% higher. So the combination of the two really gives a very, very, very different dimension on the way the ball's going to land. So that shot into wind on a links course is completely useless. It's hitting the wind, it's hitting it like a brick wall, stalling and dying. Whereas if I'm playing a shot into if I'm fortunate enough to hit one far enough to have this club into the 18th at Wentworth on the west course, you've got water short, I need to get it high and get it landing soft. As long as you're not into a wind, that's a great shot. It's up there with a flight similar to a 5-iron in terms of spin. So if I try and keep I'll try and get on top and keep the flight down a little bit more like an iron swing. So I've got right on top of that. We're still seeing 14-degree launch, almost 3,900 on spin. We're still seeing 104 feet in height, 45-degree land angle. So even getting 4 degrees down on it, like I did with the driving iron, we've picked up 10, 15% in terms of height. So that's really where, as a simple differentiation between them, that's one of the key differentiations between hybrid and driving iron, is the height you're going to get. So what you must consider is what's your natural flight. If you're naturally a high ball hitter, very high ball hitter, if you spin it a lot, then the more wood-like hybrids like this one are likely to flare it up and kick it up in the air. And particularly as an off the tee club, the driving iron could then give you that lower, more forwards, more controllable flight. If you play a course where the shots into the greens are all carry, and if you've got relative to the distance you'd need this club for, if there are a lot of holes where there are bunkers short or water short, God forbid, then that sort of shot into the green, you're going to need the height and need the stopping power, and that points more towards this club. So if you're a low ball hitter, the hybrid; if you're a high ball hitter, the driving iron. And there are obviously variants within hybrids that will alter the launch and the spin a little bit, but ultimately more forgiveness and higher flight, higher spin. A little less forgiveness, lower flight, more run out. So those are the main considerations when picking between driving iron and hybrid. There are a few more that through the course of a fitting we might see sort of other reasons for going to one or other from a consistency point of view, but in the main those are generally the things you need to consider when working out which club type suits that gap in the bag.